You are now listening to the DJ Times podcast, the nexus of all things DJ. This podcast is brought to you by DJ Expo. DJ Expo is America's longest-running DJ convention and exhibition. Produced by DJ Times Magazine, DJ Expo 2019 is set for August 12th to 15th at Harrah's Resort in Atlantic City, New Jersey. DJ Expo features more than 100 DJ-related exhibitors, 30 seminars, panels, and keynotes, and 3 nights of sponsored events and parties. As always, if you're a professional DJ or you want to become one, DJ Expo is the place to be. For the latest information on DJ Expo, please visit thedjexpo.com. Here in our latest podcast, we connect with industry legend Josh Wink. I'm Jim Tremaine, the editor of DJ Times, and here we go. You know, when people find out I work for DJ Times, they often ask me, well, who's your favorite DJ? Of course, my response is often, well, how much time you got? Because there's so many good ones out there and so many new ones coming out all the time. But eventually, I run down a few genuine favorites. On the turntablist side, there's Qbert, Invisible Scratch Pickles from San Francisco, The Executioners from New York, Z-Trip from Phoenix, A-Track from Montreal by way of America. There's a zillion more, but those are the first ones that come to mind. For electronic music, there's a lot. There's Danny Tenaglia from New York, Mr. C from London, Laurent Garnier from Paris, Francois K from New York. And also, there's this episode's subject, Josh Wink from Philadelphia. They're all different approaches, all different music, different DJs. And they've all mastered the craft and influenced scores of other DJs, the ones who are paying attention anyway. But getting back to Josh Wink, he was always at the forefront of America's electronic scene. He's a pioneer, really, from back in the days when this music was relatively new and its culture hadn't become a mainstream reality that it is now. Lucky for everyone, as a DJ producer, he took his talents well beyond Philadelphia. Not only has he been a terrific DJ who learned his craft from the bottom up, he's also created vital and lasting music that took him around the world many times. He's played everywhere. He's played the sketchiest generator-powered raves out in the woods. He's played the nicest clubs in island paradises. He's played all the major modern festivals. But it was in Europe where Wink found his first big audience. In the mid-late 90s and early 2000s, Wink racked up a string of influential productions. While they were crucial underground and club tracks here in the States, several of them became actual pop radio hits in Europe at a time when very little of that music was heard on American airwaves. Of course, Higher State of Consciousness from 1995 always seems to be the track that everyone knows. It's really one of his evergreen dance floor tracks, like Strings of Life or Plastic Dreams, something that almost any underground DJ can drop and the place will just go nuts. Higher States is acid breakbeats at its finest, a tweaked-out 303 bass line veering all over the map. It's an actual hook, and it doesn't let go. Truly brilliant stuff. But there are others. Don't Laugh, I'm Ready, How's Your Evening So Far, Super Freak, and don't sleep on his 2003 EP, 20 to 20, which is loaded with 7 acid techno bombs that'll wreck any late-night dance floor. There's also a slew of remixes, including one of my all-time favorites, his gorgeous, bewildering mix of Radiohead's Everything in Its Right Place. My own connection to Josh Wink goes way back to the first several years of DJ Times. As the magazine celebrates 30 years, it's a little wild to look back at the days he was making records for Strictly Rhythm, to the mid-90s launch of his Ovum label, to the womb parties he did with King Britt at Philadelphia's long-lost Fluid nightclub. Over the years, we've caught him at several venues around the world. Beyond various clubs and festivals in Philly, New York, and Miami, we've seen him at Beta in Denver, the Complex in London, at Space in Ibiza. He never disappoints. And for years, his Ovum party in Miami was one of the events that all the DJs paid their respect. Whether it was a devoutly underground artist like Dubfire or a chart topper like David Guetta, at some point in the evening, you'd see them checking out Wink's set. These days, life is good for the 49-year-old Josh Wink, as he picks and chooses his professional opportunities. he still keeps a busy touring schedule, balancing the intimate clubs and big festivals like Miami's Ultrafest, where he's played the Carl Cox Megastructure, a massive airplane hangar-sized venue. Also this weekend, he returns to Detroit's Movement Festival. This Saturday, May 25th, he plays the main stage in the 6 p.m. slot. But also on Sunday, May 26th at the L Club, Wink will helm the 25 Years of Ovum party that will include sets from label mates Ambivalent and Manic. Of course, DJ Times will be at Movement too, with its America's Best DJ booth, where fans can vote for their favorite U.S.-based DJ, and obviously, Josh Wink is certainly on that ballot. We were fortunate to be welcomed into Josh's home this past summer, the night after he played a late-night event at Philly's Warehouse on Watts venue. The interview has been edited, of course, for timeliness, but we still left some of the more relevant info in, mainly due to Josh's thoughtful answers. You'll see what I mean. Back to Josh. He's truly one of electronic music's great talents, a humble, down-to-earth artist, someone you must experience in a club setting to fully appreciate his edgy yet broad electronic sound, one that includes acid, techno, house, and breaks. You know, all the good stuff. So here we are with one of America's great DJ producers, Josh Wink. So we're here in Northern Liberties in Philadelphia with Josh Wink the night after he played the Warehouse on Watts last night. And we want to just catch up with him. It's his annual birthday party. How do you think it went last night? You did a 6-hour set.
Yes, I wish it went longer, actually. It's funny when you have longer sets, I get lost with time and programming. I think we were talking earlier over dinner about the fact that when you program for longer periods of time, I get the freedom to be able to play different music that I'm used to playing in 2-3 hour sets, where I can get to start the night with playing atmospheric, moody, slow music and build up into something forensic. And I had a great time. It was pure fans. You know, it's a venue that we just started using in Philadelphia, and we really feel that the people came there were really for me and the celebration of the music and what I can give them. And I had a great time, and it was hot.
Yeah, it was hot. I got there later after 2:00, and it was getting a little darker sounding. But you said you got caught in a little disco loop last night.
Yeah, people in Philadelphia give me the ability to kind of show my musical roots of playing on different styles of music, and I love to have that opportunity to be able to do that. I do that, when I play anyways, because that's who I am. I am always some mixture of different styles of music, whether it be house and techno. Mm-hmm. But in Philly, I get to play a little bit more soulful and Philly soulful style. And, Philadelphia's birthplace of disco house production. So
and Philly International.
That's right. Not too far away from here, actually. The studios where Larry Gold arranged all the strings for Vince Montana and everybody. So I grew up in the 70s as someone that necessarily didn't really like disco music, but as I became a record collector and buyer and DJ in the 80s when I was a teenager, I began to understand and appreciate the roots and the magnificence of that style of music.
And it isn't just the Philly International stuff and some of the early hip-hop. I remember there were days at the Fluid nightclub where in one particular week you could see Josh Wink, King Britt, Diesel Boy, Questlove. I'm probably forgetting some other people. Very, very rich history of DJs here in Philadelphia.
Yeah, we've always kind of been known as the underdogs of goodness. We don't get lost in we're in the shadow of a lot of cities. We've been foreshadowed by the movements of music from Detroit and Chicago and New York because we're Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. But we have a rich variety of good music coming from Philadelphia, regardless of what it is. And we tend to be the underdogs, the rocky. Right. If you were the rocky stature, the underdogs that kind of end up winning somehow or other.
I always get the feeling when I'm out at clubs in Philadelphia, it's a little bit like Detroit in the sense that the people who still go out and party here, they're a little older. They seem to be a little more responsible. It's not nearly as messy as a lot of the other places. Do you get that feeling?
Well, there are others that are opposite in every city as well, too. Mm-hmm. We definitely have our share of clubs in Philadelphia where, you know, different style of music is more apparent, and there's a younger kind of crowd for EDM, you know, younger
hip hop
style
or whatever. Yeah.
I have an older history here in Philadelphia, and I am a little bit older, so I tend to get a little bit of an older crowd. I mean, I have younger fans that definitely come out and want to check it out and see what Josh Wink is about, and they may know of me from the name, but they may not know of me in terms of listening to me and who I am as a DJ. So last night we had a lot of people, my friends, who got babysitters for the night, and you know, couldn't sleep in. But no, we have a great scene here in Philadelphia, a mixture of both, but tends to be people who are very knowledgeable about what they want and where they go.
Before we get into some of your DJ beginnings, I guess the biggest news in the DJ world is the death of Avicii. How did that strike you?
I mean, the death of anybody is, you know, an interesting concept, you know, in terms of my spirituality and just what happens and what goes on and what's next. I was told that he was plagued with addiction. I am, you know, extremely empathetic and compassionate to people with addictive, you know, habits. Mm-hmm. I've been involved in the industry since I've been a teenager for over 25 years. And actually, in Philadelphia, you had to be 21 years of age to get into a nightclub. And the only way I can get in to hear electronic dance music, house music in the 80s was by working at a nightclub where you can be 18 years old to be a barback. And that was the only way I can hear this music. So I remember I was a barback at 18, cleaning glasses, picking them up, carrying 3 cases of beer up the steps from the freezer room. And I saw people passed out in the bathroom and just high as a kite and not really caring. And I was like, this is what it's about, you know? And I looked at things differently. I never really went into get drunk and do drugs. I just solely wanted to hear the music. So my outlook on, you know, substances is different. But, you know, the fact that I don't know Avicii and what happened to him and his cause of death. I think a lot of people, like I was being social today in the park, and, you know, people I didn't know who knew me were coming up to me saying, you know, oh, what do you think about Avicii? Because they thought I knew him. And I don't really know what he died from, but I know he had been tortured with his addiction.
And health issues related to it, yeah.
And for someone who's been doing this for over 25 years, that understands it's a hard life and it's a blessed life, but it's also a hard life. You know, I say to people, I love my job, I just dislike my work, you know.
And you don't always love airports.
No, airports, you know, I understand what I do. And after 9/11, traveling became a lot different. Mm-hmm. You know, my life became plagued with wearing certain clothes just to go through metal detectors. And I realized I changed, instead of getting stressed and pissed off about it, I just changed my attitude and said, this is what I have to do. And most artists in the music industry, regardless of what genre of music, whether it be rock, whether it be soul, whether it be hip hop, whether it be country music, they have to be on the road to make a living selling tickets. Because, you know, making a living streaming music isn't paying the bills as it used to. So it's a hard life being on the road. And, you know, I don't know if, I think he had tour management crew that traveled with him that helped alleviate some of the loneliness. But, you know, my God forsaken blessing in this industry is just that I've been doing it so long.
Right.
That I have friends in different cities all over the world that I can spend time with and connect with, because I just travel with books, you know, and I travel by myself. I don't have a tour manager. You know, I keep things down in terms of my expenses and costs, and it is a lonely life. I don't feel the pressure that I need to do drugs and get high or drink alcohol or get drunk, but that's me. And people are different, and humans are different, and he suffered from something that I wasn't really not able to fully understand, if that's the reason.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are just sort of looking at it as a cautionary tale, no matter what the end result was, whatever the cause was. Everybody knew that he had been he'd had some issues, and he was living a life of travel that you understand, but a lot of people don't understand. And he was alleviating his issues however he was doing that. He was taking a lot of very, very high-end gigs, and after a while, I guess you just burn out on that. I mean, can you imagine doing as many gigs as he did in a year?
Well, I used to be very, affluent with my DJ gigs in the 90s when it was a heyday for me. I would be...
Get it while it's hot.
I mean, I was DJing pretty much 50 weekends a year.
Right.
4 nights a week. For 15 years, that it takes a toll on you for sure. It's not as lavish as it is now. I mean, I think certain people have the luxury of being able to be a DJ rock star now. The DJ rock stars before was traveling in first class and getting a 5-star hotel.
Right.
And now it's like everybody has a private plane and gets to travel with tour managers and people. But it doesn't mean that the people in the castles don't have sickness and death and illness
Sure.
and problems like everybody else.
Yeah, you always struck me as somebody who was a little relatively egoless compared to a lot of the DJs that I'd interviewed over the years. I remember at one point we did a story, and you were explaining how you just took a backpack with you on a lot of weekends. It was just a couple changes of clothes, maybe a computer, and a couple of books.
It's still...
Same story, huh?
Yeah.
You don't check anything.
No, it's much easier. Since traveling with digital equipment has evolved, it's really kind of changed my life. I'm not a thumb drive guy. I still play with CD players, but I use Tractor as my outlet to get it out.
Right.
With CD players. So I've gone many years with traveling with a bag of records that I couldn't even carry on. I had to check, and I have fond memories of those days, and that was a good 15 years of traveling with, 75 pounds of records, and then picking some up in the record stores where I'd go. So traveling today with a backpack and a small little carry-on bag with, 2 changes of underwear, 2 socks, 3 t-shirts, and a pair of jeans I love it.
Minimal techno indeed. Want to get a little bit into the DJ beginnings as well, because I think we'll have a lot of listeners who, started their DJ careers in a very different era. What was the thing that made you want to DJ?
I got involved in radio. I wanted to be a radio DJ. And it turns out the radio station DJ that I became friends with had a mobile disc jockey company. And I became his apprentice when I was 13 years old, understanding mobile DJ work. Packing a car, setting up a system, not really knowing the art of DJing, but that is the art of DJing mobile. There's a whole thing. But there's no real turntablism, which I learned later in being from Philadelphia and growing up and seeing the Philly DJs, battle and try and learn how to seeing Jazzy Jeff when he first started to transform. And I mean, that blew my mind. But I started wanting to get into what I heard, house music and early electronic, 80s electronic new wave from the UK's, synth romantic music,
right.
Synthesizers, drum machines with bands.
The Depeche Modes.
Yeah, Depeche Mode, Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark,
Right.
Heaven 17, Section 25, the list can go on of all the people that have been influential towards me. Thompson Twins, I mean, the Soft Cell, a New Order, really influential on me. And I was just saying when I started to DJing, doing weddings and bar mitzvahs and things and Sweet 16 parties, I learned how to entertain and play the songs that people requested and had no problem doing that.
Mm-hmm.
It was just part of, you knew when to play the slow songs, you knew when to play, the hits, you knew when to play the requests. That was just part of the gig. The aspect of the art of DJing came later, but through DJing I began to realize, well, why am I playing other people's music when I have ideas of my own? that's the step into producing from DJing. But it went from learning about house music, and then kind of going into the clubs, which I couldn't do because I was under 18 years old.
Right.
And learning about, beat pitch manipulation through turntables with pitch controls, by seeing hip hop DJs and hearing house and disco DJs do their thing.
Getting back to the idea of spinning mobiles, I've had a lot of DJs I've interviewed a lot of DJs who have gone on to substantial careers who started as mobiles. And a lot of them tell me that even just playing in front of any kind of audience, you can take something from that. Do you believe that?
I believe that with life in general, though. I mean, if I can connect with 1 or 5 or 10 or 15 people at an event, I feel like I've touched someone and made a difference. And that's important to me. And I like being able, like you saw last night, I didn't even want to be on a riser last night. There was like a 12-inch riser. I'd like to be on the floor and obtainable and touchable to people, them to tell me, oh, you're great, or I saw you here, or I love your track, or what's your name, who are you? I like being approachable, and that was something that came out of being a mobile DJ.
Right.
Is that it was always approachable. And one thing that I realized growing up and taking from a mobile DJ is that I realize now, from my history in the past of what I do, I understand the responsibility I feel a DJ has is that an entertainer and an educator, being able to have both, not being too high and stuck up and snobbish to say, I can't play songs that people know, but also be someone that can play music that people don't know. And that's the balance I find that the DJ has, is being someone that can entertain. I'm there to have people be entertained, playing my music, getting people to dance, being able to control, but also being able to, besides that, also educate people with new music that they may not have heard before.
Let's move into your artistic career, your artist career a little bit. I know you made some records like E-Culture and some other ones before you really started to hit big in the mid-90s. At what point did you feel like, I'm getting good at this artist thing, at this producer thing? At what point did you feel confident that you could make music that people wanted to hear?
I always felt confident in what I did, just because it's the only thing I really wanted to do. And I was just fortunate to be able to get equipment at the right time and be able to be creative. I was going to Temple University in Philadelphia with still doing nightclub gigs, and I didn't really start traveling internationally up until 92, but I could have been doing more of that earlier. I just was very fortunate to have the right timing and just releasing the right music. My father is a college man. He was a professor and dean of admissions at a school in Philadelphia, and he always was concerned that I kept my education and through college, and I didn't drop out. And I never finished my degree at Temple University. I stopped the year before because I was making a living at doing what I was doing, and the whole objective of college, university, is to be able to find a profession in which you can provide for yourself and your future family.
And you kind of found one.
And I found one, So I was very fortunate in doing what I was doing, and I happened to be kind of good at it.
So I want to get into some of the mid-90s music. Records like Higher State of Consciousness, those were actually pop hits in Europe, weren't they?
Believe it or not, they were. Several of my tracks became pretty successful in Europe. Some I didn't even know. I would go to a country and there'd be gold records on the walls, or I'd be doing an interview with their radio stations and then saying, how does it feel to have the only instrumental track that ever went number one on the national charts, or something like this? And I was like, are you serious? I have no idea. I always look at the electronic music scene as symbiotic or similar to the jazz scene. A lot of musicians that were popular with or innovators of the jazz scene here in the States weren't able to get gigs for several reasons. Mostly, one of them was that the racism and racial issues at the time, but they were also going to places that wanted to hear their music where jazz was only...
They were more open to it.
Well, there were venues.
Right.
And there were very few venues in cities, like 2 cities in America, 3 cities where jazz was really accepted and accepted. And in Europe, there was a whole continent of just people and places where they can feel comfortable. And electronic music, techno music, house music was more accepted outside of especially with techno music,
right?
Accepted outside of America. So it didn't. I mean, it made sense for this music to be popular and big and hits in Europe because there was a culture, and America really didn't have that culture. That culture kind of stopped in the 70s when disco died.
Right, but also a lot of your main influences were European.
I had an equal influential pool of European and American-based artists. So I found it pretty influential. But a lot of the people that I ended up liking in Europe were taking music from America, from Detroit and Chicago, and making it their own too. You know, the acid house movement from the UK, which became huge in the Summer of Love, was all based around Chicago acid house movement that they made themselves popular. So we all had to go to Europe where this sound was paramount.
And that time I remember, I guess we can maybe call it the electronica era, where it seemed like a lot of that music was, or some of that music anyway, was ending up on MTV, Fatboy Slim, Chemical Brothers, Underworld, some other acts. You would, I think Higher State of Consciousness was played on MTV, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was a show called AMP.
That's right.
On MTV. And actually someone came up to me last night and said they found out about my music from AMP.
Oh, is it that compilation they put together?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
The Crystal Method and Prodigy and,
a lot of breakbeat-oriented stuff.
Ronnie Size, and there was some drum and bass on there. So, yeah, there was this time in the late 90s when it became electronica from techno. A neat time in our development of this style of music, because it came with the rave. It was kind of like the big boy rave word instead of being known as rave, which was a kind of a witch hunt word. It then became electronica, which I never liked terms and terminologies and stigmatas that go with it, but it was what it was. It
was what it was. It also seemed like the time when the major labels were just looking to do something. They wanted to have their sort of nirvana of electronic dance music. So it seemed like they were just waiting for like one of these acts to have their moonshot. And I guess the biggest one was Prodigy, right?
Prodigy, yeah.
And Chemical Brothers a little bit.
They all kind of bubbled, but no one ever really kind of stepped over and became king of the castle.
Right.
I mean, the only way for electronic music to become big in America was by corporate companies licensing tracks to adverts.
Right.
The way people found out about the Basement Jacks was from a Pringles ad, or Dirty Vegas had that car ad.
Right.
Everybody's like, what is that track in the car ad? And that's how, people broke in America, not from radio. There wasn't radio. There was college radio that was playing punk rock, reggae, open format, and then you'd have a rave hour. There wasn't internet yet to be able to have internet radio. So we took what we got. The only other place to hear it were at raves, if you were going to them, if they didn't get busted or torn down, or the nightclubs, which you had to be 21 to get in.
Speaking of the raves, a lot of the kids now have no idea the types of efforts that kids had to make just to go to these raves back in the 90s with the map points and all the craziness that went into it. Do you remember a couple of events you went to that were memorable, or events that you played?
I tend to have forgotten a lot of the vast majority of information that's in my head. I always think, I never did drugs and I never really got drunk. So when I get asked about these things, I started to question why I couldn't remember, and then I realized, I was traveling and working 3 nights a week for 20 years, 45 weeks out of 52. And I couldn't remember just because my cup was so full with amazing things.
Right.
But it's funny that you mentioned that, because I played in LA a couple weeks ago. And it was, the LA scene is developing a huge underground downtown rave. Well, not rave. It's kind of, it reminds me of a rave.
A lot of events.
But like warehouse kind of scene. And I played for a group, 4 promoters that came together to promote this party at this venue called Compound. And it was very unique how you found out about it. I did my Sirius radio show last week, and I featured the mix from my Radio Profound Sound show, and it felt, when I was doing the prologue to my Profound Sound show, it felt that it had this old feeling of how to find the rave and how do you get there. Like, there's this chicken, or a guy dressed in a chicken costume that's standing on the corner of so-and-so and so-and-so, and you had to find this chicken, and then you get a card from them, and then they give you a map of where you have to go, and then from there you have to know some other person, and then there you finally get to the space, and there's a security guard at the door, and you have to know the password, which is like "Happy Birthday, Paul," and then they'll let you in. This was how it felt, and this was 2018, and it was really refreshing. It reminded me of the old rave days, and it was neatly nostalgic.
Yeah, I remember going to a rave in downtown Los Angeles in the 90s. I think Laurent Garnier was playing, and or DJ Harvey was playing. And I remember having to do the map point thing, and this was back in the day when you could lie down in the street in LA, in downtown LA, when nobody was there. But there was 1,000 people in this little bitty room, and it took forever to find the damn place. So, yeah, there was no internet back then, kids.
Yeah, no, I mean, I never really got that aspect of it, because I was never one of the people that bought the tickets. I was always the person that was being hired to draw the people. So I was always picked up at a hotel and brought in a shuttle bus to the venue.
A much different perspective. So you've been traveling around the world for more than 20 years now. Are there a couple of favorite venues that you have, places that have maybe gone away, or places that you really enjoy playing now?
Yes and yes. We were discussing over dinner about how a lot of venues are becoming far and few between because of politics and real estate. And, we were mentioning about London, and there's so many venues that have been closed down and built condo association. I mean, it's kind of like that song by Joni Mitchell about,
A Big Yellow Taxi.
Yeah,
right.
Or turning the
They paved paradise and put up a parking lot, right?
Yeah. And that kind of gives me the idea of where we've gone, and there's not as much money to be made in having a venue be special when you could put 20 floors and billions of dollars into
and monetize every inch,
right? Which is how it is. It's all becoming the bank. So I got to see the plethora of clubs around the world in cool small cities and places, and then go back and the venue's gone, or they tore it down, or there's now condos there, or there's a supermarket there. So it's unique, being that I've had the history of seeing the wee beginnings of it, and seeing it come and go, like we were talking about the New York, when the bars and the DJ and the clubs kind of came together and became like smaller, cool venues, and people still wanted to go there rather than going to the mega big clubs.
Right.
And how the government and the city politicians even trying to wipe those away. It's a shame, because I really think it's also what builds the unique characteristics of a city, is not necessarily the architecture, but the buildings that define the city as well, what's inside of them.
Yeah, I'm reading a book now called Life and Death on the Dance Floor, 1980 to 1983 New York. It's by a guy named Tim Lawrence. He wrote the book Love Saves the Day as well, which was about sort of the early disco scene. But he very much lays out a lot of the politics and a lot of the things that were going on in New York City at the time. And it's amazing how rich the club community was back then as opposed to how it is now, because Manhattan is certainly not the same. Does Philly feel any of this?
Yes, it has. I mean, I'm not too up on the Philly nightclub scene just because I live here now, but I do only 2 parties a year here in Philadelphia, except for like a fundraiser every now and then to help something out. But yeah, I mean, we used to have, that's something that's shared globally. I haven't been to a place where it's expanding, except for maybe even Berlin's having some issues right now, but Berlin is kind of like an open-minded mecca when it comes to the livelihood laws and 24-hour liquor licenses and unique spaces and people that go to those spaces, and where parties can start at Friday and end on Monday and never close, or it's quite unique. But every little city or every little place I get to travel in the world has always had some really cool spot, and some of them are still there, and some of them unfortunately have closed down, or I simply forgot about it. And then when I reminisce with friends, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, that place, whatever happened to that place?
Right.
So actually there are untouchable condos now where they're like $4 million to. I was like, are you serious?
Hey, every little piece of real estate is important. Let me ask about advice for up-and-coming DJs now. What would you tell somebody who wants to have a career doing this or become an artist?
I always say this is just follow your heart. Don't necessarily think of what you think, but it's what you feel. I got involved in doing this music when it wasn't a big and popular thing to do, but it's the only thing that it just called to me. And I got involved in it because I wanted to eat, sleep, breathe, 24 hours, 7 days a week, music, DJ, and then became producing. You didn't think about making a living as being an artist and making electronic music. But I didn't care. If I was able just to pay my bills and the rent and take care of food, which I was able to do, and then it just happened at the right time. But people come up to me and they say, well, what advice, like your question? And I say, make sure to follow your heart. It's something that you really honestly want to do. A couple of my cousins' kids, so I don't know if that's cousins once removed or
right.
First cousins, second cousins, who are in their 20s, they find out that I'm Josh Wink, and I'm, a DJ and producer that's been doing this since the beginning, and blah, blah, blah. They always kind of corner me at Thanksgiving dinners, and they say, hey, I want to get involved. And one of my cousins from Ohio kind of asked me, I'm interested. I think it's kind of cool. And I gave him advice. I was like, find out like Point Blank in LA. And he actually ended up moving from Toledo, Ohio.
Yeah, studio school, right?
Yeah, like, a place to get involved, and they teach everything there. They teach music production, they teach DJing, art of traveling and touring. It's a really unique place. And, he's getting a degree, I guess, after course completion. And, he's in this thing now is like, what do I want to do? I have this knowledge. And, but it was really kind of cool because I helped shape where he wanted to go and see if this was something that he wanted to really do. But if you can look at something as in, if this is something that truly makes you happy, I'm a firm believer in making sure you do something that brings you happiness and lets you have the confidence and integrity that you're happy with yourself and living with yourself. You can make a lot of money doing something that you don't enjoy, or you can really enjoy doing something that doesn't bring you a lot of money. Do you live to work, or do you work to live?
Right.
And I got involved in this scene when there wasn't really an industry to call a living, and then all of a sudden it just exploded.
Yeah, I mean, back in the early 90s when we were doing DJ Times, we would try to do stories on a lot of these DJs. They didn't have publicists. You would get some scrap of paper. It was like, call this guy's girlfriend when she gets off work at 6 o'clock, and then maybe you'll be able to find this guy. Or here's this random rave promoter who once booked him in Wisconsin, and maybe you can find him. Yeah, it is an industry now, whereas it wasn't always like that.
Yeah, I used to give people my home phone number. You
Right.
know, we didn't have cell phones, so here's my home phone number, and when I'm home, I'll answer the phone. People actually notoriously knew I didn't answer my phone, though. I would let the answer machine pick up.
Well, that worked out.
Well, it's funny because unfortunately, a friend of mine and a scene maker in Cleveland, Ohio, Rob Sherwood, just passed away a couple months ago from, I believe, a heart attack. And I knew him because he booked me to play at a couple of his clubs in the Flats in Cleveland, Ohio in the 90s. But I did a track in 97, and it was released in 99, called Are You There? And the voice on that track was Rob Sherwood. And he called me at my house, and I was monitoring the call. And this was a time when my fax and my answering machine and phone were all connected as one unit, and it had a mini cassette. And he said, Josh, hey, it's Rob, are you there? And I sampled that, and that's how Are You There came about. But the reason why I'm saying this story is because someone wanted an interview with me. I gave him my home phone number, and you called it. So yeah, a lot has changed. But the advice is just, it's very competitive now. A lot of people are getting into it for different reasons, which is cool. I mean, if you want to get into it because you're young and excited and really get moved by the music, that's amazing. If you want to get involved into it because you like limousines and drugs and blowjobs and interviews and rock star lifestyle, then try it out. Everybody's doing it for a different reason, but you have to live and understand that there wasn't just like 200 people in the industry that there was like 25 years ago. Now there's 25,000 people that are in the industry or more that are all trying to get the same gig you're trying to get, that are making the same music that you're making or trying to make your music. It's very competitive and very frustrating, but
And there's talented people out there.
Oh, but there's also talented, non-talented people that make it, and then that becomes frustrating too. Social media was never a big thing back in the day, and now you don't have to necessarily have talent or know how to write a song, but you can have a really good publicist or a team behind you doing videos and marketing, and you can make it, and that's cool too. It's you give a pencil to a person and they'll draw a picture. You can give a pencil to a person and they'll write a poem. You can give a pencil to a person and they'll break it and make a sculpture out of it. You give a tool to someone and they may do something uniquely different with it. And that's the beauty of our resilience as humans, is that we're able to do what we want to do. And I think that's the beauty of us as humans. But you really, as an advice, just really be happy with what you want to do. And if this is something that you truly, really believe in and calls to you, then give it a try.
Thanks, Josh. You can catch Josh Wink in Detroit this weekend. Not only is he playing the main stage at the Movement Festival in Hart Plaza, that's a 6 p.m. slot on Saturday, May 25th. He's also celebrating 25 years of Ovum recordings at L Club on Sunday, May 26th. DJ Times will be at the Movement Fest with a voting booth for our America's Best DJ promotion. We hope you stop by the booth, pick up the latest issue, and vote for your favorite DJ, whether it's Josh Wink or one of the other 99 nominees. See you in the Motor City.